Hey, good Monday to you all. Good to be back with you on these Monday rewinds. After having been gone pretty much the last 4 Mondays for conferences, I got to tell you, I'm excited to be back at home and kind of into a routine. Last 2 Sundays, we've been talking about Acts chapter 16 and Paul and Silas setting out on their mission trip. But there are a few verses that we didn't cover the past 2 weekends. I want to wrap this chapter up this morning. So let's just look at verses 35 through 40. Go back and read them on your own if you would. But the magistrates have decided to let Paul and Silas go, but they're trying to do it hush-hush, undercover, not making a big deal out of it. Paul won't have any part of that. He wants a public apology. He wants this to be known out front. That he is a Roman citizen and what they did was illegal. He should have had a fair trial, should never have been in that situation anyway. So why did Paul wait until after all of this was done to announce that he was a Roman citizen? Well, I think we have to go back in our mind to a couple weeks ago. We said that there should be nothing that would hinder the gospel in this mission. Timothy was circumcised not for salvation purposes as a Gentile, but to help make his witness a little bit more sure. So let's think about Paul for a second. What if he would have announced this earlier and before? Well, I got 3 things I want to share with you. The first one is it probably would have protracted the whole legal thing out, which would have taken away from time in the mission field. Paul would have had to present documentation that he was a Roman citizen, and I've read that a lot of people didn't carry those things with them because they were very valuable, so he may have had to go all the way back or send a messenger all the way back to Tarsus to get his documentation. Well, in modern day times, it would have taken like a 25-hour drive in my Honda Accord to get there. So you can see in those days, by boat, by foot, it was going to be a long process, which would have severely hampered their time there in Philippi. The second part of that is by admitting that he was a Roman citizen, Paul would have been saying that he submitted to Caesar. Now, remember, the Romans said you could worship any god you want as long as you didn't put one above Caesar, because he was revered as a god at that time. And so that would have hampered Paul's witness as well by admitting that he was a citizen in submission to Caesar. So that would have been good. Later on in a letter back to Philippi and encouraging them, he says in chapter 3, verse 20, that our citizenship is in heaven, not here on earth. Okay, so good thing to think about there. And then the third is this. If Paul was going to be beaten and put in jail for doing Christian mission work, exorcising this demon from the girl, freeing her from her enslavement, sharing the gospel, what would it have been like if he would have produced his get out of jail card ahead of time? Would those who were not Roman citizens, the Gentiles who were not Roman citizens in that area, have thought, wait a minute, I don't have that. If Paul is getting beaten for following Jesus and spreading the gospel, what would happen to me if I was in that situation without having a get out of jail free card? Remember, these are baby believers. These are people who are just coming to faith. And if they see that Paul is using this card to get out of trouble, what would happen to them? Because they didn't have that. Now, later on, the church in Thessalonica will admit that they knew that Paul had probably been through all these circumstances in Derbe and Lystra, Iconium, and in 1 Thessalonians, I think it's chapter 2, right off the top of my head, they say that they continue to preach the gospel in the face of strong opposition. So there's that people had learned from what Paul went through in doing that. So I have a final question for you this morning as we think about this. 1, he could have proven it, would have been a lengthy process, taken away from time in the mission field. 2, he would have had to admit that he was submitting to Caesar rather than God. And 3, he was avoiding difficult circumstances by saying, hey, no, wait a minute, my primary citizenship is Roman. How much opposition are you willing to endure for the gospel? Paul was obviously willing to take on a lot for the sake of the gospel. And you got to remember that we have so much more information and so many more much encouragement from the Bible than they ever had in those days. Chances are we're not going to be beaten with rods and thrown in jail. Chances are we're not going to be killed for our faith at this day and time. Now, our brothers and sisters around the world in some places are, but we are safe from that. Most likely we're going to have to face some ridicule. Maybe we'll get excluded from some cool event or something because we're a holy roller, we're a Bible thumper, we're a goody two-shoes. Some people may call us names and call us fools for following the Bible and that there is no God, that kind of stuff. Are you willing to endure those kind of things, even if it costs you a few friends, maybe even some relationships within your family, knowing that your true citizenship is in heaven and that's the family that's most important, being part of the family of God? What are you willing to endure for the sake of the gospel and hearing the words, well done, good and faithful servant? I, for one, want to have no regrets. And when it comes to that point, hey, have a good day. Consider, what are you willing to endure for the sake of the gospel? Have a great week.